Hey guys, Londrum here, host of and storyteller of Occultists Anonymous. You probably knew that because this is showing up on our channel, but hey, in case somebody shared this with you, hi, that's where I'm from, Friday nights on Twitch most of the time, unless of course this is a really, really old video and maybe our schedule will change. Whatever, don't worry about all that. So one of the big things that has come up in the community Discord recently has been how to make second edition Mage the Awakening Legacy. This is a little different from the way they were done in first ed, which I don't have a lot of experience for, so I don't have like baggage or anything like that. So this is just how I make 2E legacies. They really, really are straightforward. They're not difficult, but reading through the rules and the core rulebook, it might take a second. I almost guarantee the way you think they're made is probably right, but let's just walk through everything, okay? We're going to hit some of the really, really basic stuff first, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty stuff with attainments, which I know really kind of throw people. So yeah, like I said, the basics. You got to come up with a name. This, I would go ahead and say, go ahead and come up with a name that they probably called themselves that's like shorter and just kind of is more of a casual name. And then there's probably another name that they go by. Maybe this is just something that other people call them casually. It might be a little more derogatory, especially if they're left-handed. If you don't know what left-handed means, it's just they're people who use magic inappropriately and wrongly. They're not necessarily going to be crazy abyssal kind of stuff, but it's stuff that makes all the other mages go, hang on. Not sure we're okay with that. So, but yeah, just come up with some names. This is a really good way to come up with both their name, because that's super important, but it also helps you create a setup for what they think about themselves and the nickname they kind of give themselves, and the nicknames other people give them very quickly will tell you, hey, this is the relationship they have with other people. Prerequisites for joining your legacy: pick a path, pick an order, not necessarily always both. You could just be one or the other. But remember that this is going to be the way most people join unless they're able to create a praxis that imitates the first attainment, which we'll get to. And if they can do that, then of course they can join. They've proven that they have the necessary know-how to line up with the intent of the legacy, so to speak, and then they get a refund for the praxis. We'll talk about that attainment thing here in a second. So remember, if you want this to be something that only a few people can join, that under controlled circumstances and under specific strictures, you want to make the attainment difficult to emulate. Give it something that you couldn't normally do in a spell. Once you do that, then nobody can join just by using a praxis to imitate it. Second, you have the Arcana and other knowledge that might be required. Generally speaking, this is going to be, they've got a Gnosis requirement that every attainment level requires, so don't worry about that. But it also is going to have an Arcana. Usually that's going to be their ruling Arcana. Maybe you require them to have additional Arcana. Maybe it's even generically, well, you have to have, 2 of life and then 1 of this, or this, to show, maybe there's kind of subcategories within the legacy that they focus on or something like that, or specific skill knowledge, crafts or academics or something like that. Or maybe it's literally they know New York like the back of their hand because they're a big city-focused legacy. This is, again, a good place to find some good fluffy lore, but don't worry about creating like really crazy requirements unless you want it to be very difficult. Remember, 2 dots in something is professional, they work every day level skills. 5 is absolutely ridiculous. 1 person in like a million have that level of skill. So keep this stuff kind of low because we're just talking about initiation here. And then we have indoctrination, which is how they are brought into the legacy in a very ceremonial way. This could be literally forging themselves with a piece of siderite nail and in a blazing furnace of fire, a celestial fire and mana, and smashed with a big hammer made of mana. Or it could literally be discussing and defending some theses that they've come up with. Those are 2 legacies right out of the first ed. If you recognize them, hey, bonus points for you. But this should be the big showy bit. Doesn't necessarily need to be flashy, but it's going to be the ceremonial part. Next, you need to come up with yantras. Don't overcomplicate this. It's okay to keep these simple and freely available. You get +1 on spells for using the simple yantras, and these are things that they can do off the cuff, back of the hand. They can have easily prepared. It's only a +1 bonus. So who cares? I mean, that's as easy as, oh, I remember to bring a coin. That's very basic level yantras. The +2 stuff should require some time, some effort, or provide some kind of disadvantageous condition. I'll get those words right. This should be like they have to cast while drunk, or they have to be limited and blinded, or something like that. And of course, or require them to go into, cross the gauntlet into the shadow to find some spirit goodness and bring that back, or something like that. This is on par with sacrament, so something is burned and destroyed, or sympathetic yantra, something similar to somebody. Again, it shouldn't be crazy difficult, but it should require some time and effort. If they bypass it through like, oh, I have to be blinded, but oh, look, I have inward, outward eye. At that point, it's just a +1, because the point is that they have to welcome that disadvantage. The disadvantage is part of it. If they speed through the effort of collecting it, that's because they're being smart. So, because remember, the disadvantageous condition is also going to provide them a beat, or at least should. Next, you have Oblations. Again, don't stress. This doesn't have to be crazy, over-the-top ceremony. Just make it a simple set of rituals, things they can do normally and easily, because this is a bonus for the mage, and they are limited in how much mana they're getting per day based on the dots of the ruling arcana. So a newbie mage is still only getting 1 mana a day. Even a master mage is getting 5 mana a day. They're going to burn through that stuff easily. This should be a big, useful tool for when they just need that little bit of extra mana real quick. So something that they can do simple, discussions, puzzles, something they can do with their hands, or even just, take a scene and then, they've, meditated enough to recenter themselves. Whatever. Something that just takes a little bit of time and effort, and they're good. Of course, talking about ruling arcana, this is the big focus for the legacy, and I think it should always be tied to the path that they originated from. But of course, if they originated from a specific order, now you're free and clear to pick whatever you want. So think that through, because that'll help give you some background foundation of, well, this is a Moro's legacy, and the ruling arcana is fate. Excuse me? How did Moros get into fate? No. It's a free council legacy that a lot of Moros come from, but we bring in lots of people, and our ruling arcana is fate. Okay. Now that makes sense, or at least a little bit more sense. And then, of course, for our group, we actually homebrew the rules for this, and we actually, while there is a specific ruling arcana for the legacy, there's usually a second one that is also brought in. That's the optional arcana, and that's usually also from the ruling arcana of the path, but it could be, something else, again, with orders. And we do a little homebrew rule where if you already have one as the ruling arcana and you don't want to double up, which gives you a 1 XP refund, we'll just let you take the other. And that way you have both as your ruling arcana. That's our homebrew thing. You see how that works in your game, discuss it amongst your table. But it's not an official rule. That's just us. And then also determine, how does this legacy handle the mentor to student bond? Because almost every legacy has a teacher passing on their knowledge to a student. This could be one teacher with a bunch of students, kind of like Kung Fu school, 12 students, one master, and they have ranks and tiers. And, once you've graduated, then you will ascend to be a master and take on a bunch of students of your own. Or maybe it's always the Jedi style, Jedi master and Padawan. And they work together, or actually Jedi Knight and Padawan. Either way, a one-on-one bond. Or maybe the actual entire legacy is Sith style. Yeah, I'm going to play both sides of the Star Wars game here. And it's literally, there's only ever two. And they spend time teaching and training and working with each other and keeping themselves sharp and then killing any other imitators. Determine it. That's more lore. And also, when your players or when you introduce it to your storyteller, they'll have an understanding of more of your group. Okay, so let's talk attainments. First off, make them unique and have a specific purpose. Remember that attainments are not, they're not spells in the way that all the other mage things are, which can be adjusted and changed and retargeted and adjust. They are made for specific use for that legacy. They, of course, require no die roll ever. And so if something in an existing spell asks for successes to determine how effective it is, it's always equal to the number of dots in the highest prerequisite arcanum, which can do kind of some funky things if it's one of the optional arcanum effects. So you might actually have your optional higher than your than the base ruling arcana, stuff like that. But it's always, if it's a prerequisite, it's the highest of the arcana. And then there's also the primary factor is going to be equal to the dots in the highest prerequisite arcanum -1. This is very similar to how the primary factor is generated for all normal spells. You know, if its primary factor is potency, it's whatever your arcanum is -1. Additional spell factors beyond the primary are determined by the lowest prerequisite arcanum and is equal to the penalty. This means that no secondary spell factor is going to be above 3 steps because that's your -6. So you'll get the free step and then -2, because I have an arcanum of 5, and then -4, okay, still good, arcanum of 5, -6, can't go that high. So, right, don't worry about that because that will change per mage, but that's just going to be based on their arcanum. So that you don't have to build into the attainment necessarily, though it is handy if you're running it for like a homebrew thing to go ahead and include it just to remind people of, oh, hey, this is what happens at these certain levels, right? Finally, reach, which is the part that's kind of odd for some folks. Reach for a spell is calculated by the dot rating of the attainment. So we don't care what, dots you have in the arcanum. The reach for a 1-dot attainment, the first level initiate attainment, is the same for a brand new initiate who just joined and a longtime master who has 5 dots in the arcanum. Don't care, it's about the level of the attainment. Also remember that all accumulated mana costs in a spell are reduced to 1. So if you're including things like sympathetic range casting, this is a way to keep it cheap. You can do that. Plus, I need an additional mana for incognito presence. And now because I have sympathetic range and I'm casting incognito presence, it doesn't matter. It's all just down to 1 single mana. But we'll have to calculate what those reach and dots are. And we'll talk about that here in a second. Not every dot level needs to have one, but you should include some optional effects. These are going to be a secondary effect to the original attainment or an alternative effect, and it will use an optional arcanum. This optional arcanum will usually be the same across all the boards, but hey, attainments are designed to be atypical, so maybe you adjust things a little bit. Okay, so now how to actually make an attainment. We're going to walk you through an example one. This isn't the best example, but it's a simple one that I can walk you through, okay? So pick your attainment, pick a spell of the attainment level that you're looking at. We'll do this because we're going to start we're just going to do a 1-dot spell because we're doing a 1-dot attainment. It has to be of that level. If you do a second, you don't have any reach, you can't cast it, right? So we'll use a 1-dot life spell for a wolf-themed druid legacy thing, and we'll use Speak with Beasts. Okay, so it has a primary factor of duration, so that's affected by the number of life dots. The subjects that you're going to cast on, because that's a secondary factor, is also based on life dots, because we're not using a secondary optional Arcana. It's all just life. And then we have a 1-dot spell, and it's a 1-dot attainment, so we have 1 free reach. And, well, we could make it instant cast with that free reach, but then that gives us a duration of like 6 seconds, maybe up to 30. That's not super useful for wanting to chat with some animals. So we'll actually say that it takes a scene to prepare, because technically they're all instant actions, but because it's an attainment, there's no ritual casting. But if it's not cast at ritual time, it takes a scene of preparation. This also does not get shorter with your gnosis. So it's always going to be just that one little scene of, let me just put some stuff together and snap my fingers and aha, now I can speak with beasts. And now I can do it with the advanced duration. So just like that, we have our first spell. It's speak with beasts. We have 1 free reach, so we're going to put that into advanced duration, which means that because we're not putting an instant cast, it takes a scene to prepare. Done. We're good. Secondary spell factors like scale for multiple targets, that's all based off the life dots. That's not built into the spell. That's just kind of depending on what Arcana you have. But now let's add an additional optional effect with spirit, because let's go full werewolfy Thyrsis kind of thing, right? Let's add in gremlins. Again, this probably actually isn't a great legacy. I'm just using it as an example. So default, it has the potency of life or spirit, whatever is the highest. And its secondary factors, so things like scale, is going to be based on the lower of the life or spirit. And of course, we're going to put the 1-dot, the 1 free reach, we're going to put that into instant cast. That way we can, see something's going on, snap our fingers, and curse somebody's weapons or something like that. Now, it does have a short duration really early on, but later as a higher end mage with enough duration, just looking at somebody and willing their stuff to have a problem and cursing them with gremlins, sure, that's fine, especially since I can do it again and again and again and again and again, because it's an attainment and therefore it does not have spell control. I don't have to worry about it. I unleash gremlins for 3, 4, 5 turns. I can't actually remember all the duration steps, but I can just fire that off willy-nilly. I don't really care about having an advanced duration because I can just reuse it over and over. I don't need a long duration. Whew. And that's it. Boom, done. We've got the base and we've got the optional effect. Now, if you have a 2-dot attainment, you have a choice to make. You can take another 1-dot spell and have 2 reach, so now we can have advanced duration and advanced scale. Or we can take a 2-dot spell and work with 1 dot of reach. That's it. 3 dots, or 3rd dot attainment, 3rd level attainment, middle attainment, whatever you want to call it. Now we can mess with 3-dot spells and 1 reach, or 2 dots and 2 reach, or 1 dot and 3 reach. Right? Simple. So it's just a linear thing, right? Okay. Now, when I make these, I personally go through with the idea of the legacy, and I create 10 spells. I do 5 based off the primary ruling arcanum, and then I come up with 5 additional effects. So after kind of coming up with these 10 spells and conditions, I trim off some that are not in fitting with the legacy. And then I may also apply some further conditions or requirements for some of the ones that are really kind of out there. Well, let's kind of tweak them so they feel focused on the legacy. So like, for instance, speak with beasts, let's limit it to only speaking with wolves, and maybe other canines. So it's, fair and well-rounded, not completely one-sided focused, right? And then gremlins, gremlins and wolves, and how is that? Maybe we ruined the ability for other hunters to, hunt and track, so their weapons or GPS or anything like that, or even maybe cuts off pieces and devices of communication, like wolves cutting off prey from the rest of their herd, right? Things to isolate them using gremlins. These kind of things. Now, all of a sudden, it's basically the same spell, but we're going to kind of narrow its focus a little bit, because remember, This stuff is free. There's no act of hubris that's involved. There's no paradox. Sleepers are not suffering dissonance, and the effects are not affected by quiescence. So they're not going to fade. They're not going to make any sleepers go nutty. You can literally just throw this stuff out, and yeah, you could be the, Dr. Doolittle of your day and going around and not only able to speak to wolves, but lay your hands on people, because remember, we didn't add advanced range, and boom, 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 hey, you guys can all speak with animals. Well, speak with wolves, and at, the high-end level, you're a 5th rank master mage, you can do that to 3 people, and it'll last for a year. And then you take another hour to prepare and do it again and do it again and do it again. And now you've created a whole bunch of folks who can talk to wolves. It's probably going to attract some attention, and some people are probably going to want to chat with you, but there you go. That's all within the rules. Me attempting to keep this short, though. So I will be in the comments section of this video, as well as on our Discord. That's yeetinto.space. If you want to just get like HTTP yeetinto.space, and come join us and chat with us if you've got questions or want to talk some stuff out more of like, hey, I've got this legacy I'm working on. How does this? How do I? We'll talk about it. There's a whole channel for it. And then hopefully, of course, the comments will be good and full of discussion and comments and kind of tweaks and stuff like that. If you think I got something wrong, please let me know politely. And we'll talk it out in the comments so everybody else can see it for the future. That way this video has some life and legs to it. If I'm really, really off base, maybe we'll delete this and just go sweep it under the rug, and I'll make a new video with a correction. But I'm pretty confident with what I've got here, guys. Yeah, so hopefully short video, nice and snappy-ish. And then, of course, hopefully some good discussion down in the comments. And we will see you next time. Stay lucky.